You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my somewhat awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's guest?
Hi, my name is Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce Kelly Baltzell. Kelly is the CEO and the founder of Beyond Indigo. She's the CEO and co-founder of Komorebi, which is the home of grieving.com, which she founded in 1997. She's on the editorial advisory board of Today's Veterinary Business, and she's an ongoing columnist for MWI since 2011. She has a master's in psychology and counseling from St. Mary's University of Minnesota. On the personal side of things, she lives in Minnesota, and no, there's no ice on the lakes in the summer. We have ice on the lakes everywhere in Canada, so we're good. She gets offline to do gardening and has had the same worm farm colony for the last 14 years. Wow, how do you keep that? I want to start with a worm farm. How do you get one, and how do you build one?
Worm farms are kind of fun. They even have worm ranches, which is kind of funny. Ooh. So you had to kind of look that up. Ivan, they have a lot of different formats for you to have a worm colony. I have the apartment complex series, which is, I know, really fancy.
Ooh.
It's a tower where you have 3 or 4 levels, because when worms eat, they crawl up. So you keep it in your house or someplace where, like, since it's Minnesota, won't freeze, or so I just keep it in my furnace room, and it doesn't smell, and it composts, and you just put all your fresh vegetables, or things like left from apples and pears. It won't handle oils or salts or cooked foods, and then the worms eat an astonishing amount of produce and food, and then they leave you black gold, which is worm casings.
That's incredible. I never heard about that. That's I need to look into that.
Yeah.
So I think we met like 5 or 6 years ago. I don't remember, at one of the conferences, and you've been running the business online for the very long time, and you do business for the online side of the veterinary business. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how do you get that accomplished with building, hiring people, and running it online rather than offline? And you didn't have to convert, I guess, because of the COVID.
No, we did not have to convert for the COVID, for at least the working at home portion. That was just a normal day for us. So we're a digital marketing company in the veterinary space, meaning that we will help with websites. But that's just a small portion now. Websites used to be the sun in a marketing solar system, and now it's just another planet. A lot of veterinarians still think a website is the marketing tool. It's one of many. So we do, websites, reviews, search engine optimization, which is now broken down into 5 parts, social media marketing, which is broken down into multiple parts, online reviews. But mostly what we do now is people have a marketing goal. We want more tails to the door. How do we get those? And then we go out and put together a marketing plan that makes sure that goal gets implemented. And then we show you results, really, really, really good results. So that's kind of what we do. We've kind of made marketing easier, but more impactful. So that's the marketing side. Working from home, when I started the company, I kind of thought about how did I want to live? I started with priorities, like what were my priorities as a human being and what made sense to me versus what were the invisible shoulds in the universe, in the workplace. And I thought, it's a tech company. I can do whatever I want. Tech companies in themselves mean that you kind of have more freedoms from social parameters. And I'm happier working from home. I can control my environment. So that's how I started the company. And then everything along the way, we kind of went and said, well, does this make sense for our culture? What makes people happy? What makes a better work environment? Because a lot of work environments are parasitic. The workers come to work and they get sucked dry and then get kicked out the door, and they just replace them again like a cog in the wheel. But those are human beings with lives and families and emotions. By working also remotely, it allowed us to gather and garner the best talent for us in the United States. We only have U.S. employees. So if we had a job position, weren't constrained to a geographical region to find somebody. We also weren't constrained by a brick and mortar, which I think a lot of people, business owners in COVID, are finding out that maybe they don't need a brick and mortar. It adds a lot to the bottom line, right? That's an expense, that's a fixed cost, remember, regardless of how many people inhabit it. So we just removed that from the P&L sheet. And it turns out that we have a really strong culture that we've honed over the years through this learning curve of working at home. And to the point, some new employees go through culture shock because it's so different. They're like, you guys are just amazing. I don't ever want to leave. And I'm like, awesome. So that's kind of a short summary of multiple decades of work of where we are here now.
Kelly, that's so interesting. And I remember back to the first time we met and just kind of going through this conversation. It was pre-COVID. So it was, I was all amazed. And I mean, I've talked to Ivan about this topic a lot because, like Ivan had said, he founded his first company. Has anything changed for you guys during COVID-19? Have you found yourselves being more resilient because you were this way when you went into the pandemic? Has there been any kind of unique takeaways?
I think what's going on for us is, in the beginning, we didn't blink an eye. We could just help our clients, as they were trying to transition into the new COVID world. And we didn't have to also go through an internal transition as well. What we're noticing is pretty much what everybody is noticing. We're getting tired of home. We're getting tired of our own kitchens. I mean, nothing really different than the world. Work-wise, the train's on the track and we're going down it, and we're helping all our clients because we believe when there's a crisis, you should be marketing more, not less. And we're here to support them through all their changes. And that's what we've done. So COVID hasn't changed our working habits, except we're working maybe harder and more because it is a hard time, but that's what you do when you have marketing.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So my next question is actually for both of you. And I know that COVID-19 and the pandemic has really, cracked the egg shell of what we thought of work because we've all had to transition to this. But the thing that I find interesting is for the people that still haven't bought into it, and there's tons of people there, there's tons of people that I talk to on the regular that are like, I can't wait to get back to normal. For the people that haven't kind of broke through and saw the benefits, what are those conversations like when someone asks you, what's it like to build a remote team of like 60 people all around the world, Ivan? Or Kelly, what's it like to build a remote team across the US? And, do you crack that eggshell of people's thinking, and can you, or do they have to be ready for it? So whoever wants to start.
I think anybody who wants to make a change has to be ready for it. You can't make somebody change unless they want to change. I mean, on anything, right? Because it comes from internal versus external. I know before COVID, people flat out thought I was crazy that I wanted to have a remote company. And I said, no, I'm not thinking about starting one. I'm telling you, I have one. Like, they couldn't even get their mind around that I've had a remote company for decades, not just for months, right? And now they're like asking me, well, how do you do it? What's important? I've talked to multiple CEOs in other countries, companies, not necessarily countries. And they're like, what are the tips and tricks? And I'm going to say to any owner of any company, it starts with you. Unless you're willing to change, unless you're willing to embrace, unless you're willing to let go of maybe some of the constraints you have invisibly placed on the company, it won't change. If you're a micromanager, you've got to change first and give that up. For example, you're not going to be able to look over their shoulder or walk by their desk and make sure they're not watching YouTube. It's not a possibility. So look at yourself first and then go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, I can probably add to it. And I had an experience after building SmartFlow to work at IDEX, and I didn't move in there fully. Mm-hmm. I had to be there once a month for about a week. And I'm just going to say that there's, there is something to be close to people, but there's so much waste of time. Like, if you think about traveling for me there, people take planes to fly to the hub like that to work in. And, I work with, Bill Griffin right now. He was flying to Austin to work in Pathway, and everything is solved online. Like every meeting could be done online, and you don't really, especially in the software, there's no need. And the meetings right now, everybody's habit when you turn on Zoom, if someone's not there at oh 02 or oh 03 minutes, you think they didn't show up. Think about the meetings physically. You're sitting there for 15 minutes out of the hour meeting, while someone will try to get from another wing, loses stuff along the way, buys lunch. Like this is the culture on Zoom or whatever platform you use is much better. If anybody starts chewing and, something, it's just not okay, which I hate when people try to do that. So there's a lot of things, if you're eating and doing a meeting, it's distracting. I don't know. Maybe it's okay in some cultures. We don't do that. But then you just schedule stuff better. You have to, like with your microphone. Well, you do that, Shawn. You've done that on the show. You chewed right into the microphone. It drives me nuts.
That's why I was laughing. I was like, I can't believe you're bringing this up. This is awesome. I wish I had something to chew on.
But I think so much stuff is better, and I don't even know what are the benefits of having an office. Like to me right now, office is something you can't live without. And what happened, I went to Ukraine last year I've been there for 11 months. I've built 2 companies there, and both of them have a dev team. One insisted on having an office. They said, the guy who was running the team, he said, I manage people better when they're sitting next to me. And the COVID hit. And then they all went home. And then now in Ukraine, like during the end of summer, it was like restrictions were going down. They never came back. I'm finishing paying for the office for the last 3 months. I've been paying. Nobody shows up. They're just at home because it's a waste of time. You're like 40 minutes and the public transportation to get there. You get so much. And talking about the work-life balance, the less time you spend to get somewhere, the more time you'll have for life.
Right.
Like think about how much time we're spending in traffic and all that stuff. So I think there's no other way. Like to me, it was a no-brainer for the longest time. An important thing, I think, is how do you structure? What are the rules of engagements? Do you have like a team agreement that you'll commit to and agree on? Like, how do you trust people? I think, Kelly, that's my question to you, because a lot of people ask and say, well, how do you trust people that work for you?
Right.
And, this is maybe, it would be interesting to hear, when you hire people, how do you explain the culture, the scheduling, or how does that work?
Well, we're pretty upfront at first. We try to be transparent and set expectations. Like we're still expecting, because we have people in all time zones, whatever your time zone is, that you're working, an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 day. So we set those expectations, but really, how do we trust people? If we can't trust them or they don't show the product, they wash out of the company pretty quickly, because it's pretty evident on our deliverables based on the type of company we are. But also, we're interacting all day long on Slack. I mean, people are communicating all day long. And if a new hire comes in and they're not interacting, we go and ask them why, like what's going on. Or if there's a discrepancy, we ask them why. But all of a sudden, the long-term employees will be like, they're not where I'm trying to ping them and I can't find them. So it's not like you're working in a void. I mean, we're sending 10 to 15,000 texts a week in our company just on Slack. And so people are, I think, communicating more. The new hires have said, we talk more here than we did in a brick and mortar building. So we don't have to get up and move and go down the hallway, like you were saying, Ivan, and then go get up again and go down another hallway, right, to talk to somebody else. They're communicating all day long. And we've set it up too, where we have like social rooms. So you want to talk about books? Sure. Movies? Sure. Video games? Sure. Right. The election? Sure. But you keep it to, we have COVID? Sure. But so we have all these rooms where people can join in the conversation, but it's not mandatory. Right. And each team has their own room. So Slack's been really great for that. We do also track our time because we're a service-based industry. So we charge like lawyers do. We charge by the hour. So we have to manage our client hours. So that shows up as well. But pretty much everybody knows where you are or what you're doing because we work as teams. But again, my argument is going to say, just like yours, is we're even closer together because we're online than if we were in a brick and mortar, because we're all together all the time versus just your pod in a cube farm.
Quick question on that. When you had the election discussions, did you have two separate Slack groups or one?
But you didn't have to join, and the rule is play nice and respect others' opinions. I also foster open conversations in the company because I think we've lost the art of conversation with polarity, especially in the United States, and division. Of course, inclusiveness is a conversation people have. Well, we've kind of always been doing that anyway. We don't look at skin color. We look at, can you do the job? We don't look at age. Can you do the job? We don't look at education. Can you do the job? But also we're working on art of conversation as well, because I'm old enough to remember when you could have conversations that didn't result in fistfights, and you could be respectful of other people's belief systems, and you could empower them on their journey and not have to convince them to walk your journey because it's their journey, right? We've lost that. I can say at least we've lost that in the United States. So again, it's one of those things that I can't control the United States or the world, but I can certainly foster a little think tank within Beyond Indigo of art of conversation. What does that mean, right? Enjoy your other human being in the office space. Don't bash them. That's not cool. We don't do bashing.
Yeah, I love it, Kelly. So where I want to drive the conversation next is all around efficiency gains. So this idea of remote work, for me has been an incredible efficiency gain. I'll just describe my day kind of pre-COVID. I live 2 hours from the city that I worked in. I would drive up Monday morning. So I'm in the car for 2 hours driving to work, 6 a.m., get to the office, have a coffee, get interrupted by somebody else. That's not even on my team because we were in a tech incubation place and there's a ton of people there that want advice, and I loved it. So I would let an hour go probably every day to just some external.
Someone ask you for advice?
Yeah, man, hard to believe, but happens all the time still. I don't know what it is. Must be the internet. I'd lose an hour there, and then, I'd go to the office and I'd go to my meetings, and, I'd go to lunch, and then I'd go to the coffee shop down the street. And a lot of this stuff I miss and I love. But the question that I have is just what type of efficiency gains, and you guys probably will forget them because you've been remote for so long. But, what are the obvious ones? I mean, I've just mentioned a few, like the distractions, the commute. But is there others? And I mean, Ivan, in particular, I want to kind of ask you this. I mean, your team is around the world, quite literally, and it is now and it was then. How do you deal with time zones? I mean, Kelly, you've got this issue too. And what does that look like? But where are the efficiency gains along the way? And whoever wants to contribute, wave your hand and go first.
I'll jump in because you asked me. So, so dealing with the time zones is very simple. I wake up at 4 a.m. and my first meeting is at 5 a.m. So, but what I do like about, and that's true.
You're kind of an alien though. Like, come on.
But what I do like is that this time around and in this startup, I gained work-life balance. And 3 is when my meetings are over. And I go work out for 2 hours, and then I pick up my son from school, and then I take him to some sport activities, and I have time to wind down and actually read something in the evening. So it's incredible. I do go to bed at 9, but I do wake up at 4, and I fill my day that way, but it's all scheduled back to back in the meeting. So I think that if I had to drive somewhere to get there, it wouldn't happen. So I choose to get up that early because I finish my day at 3, and then I have everything available for me, for my family, for my newborn daughter. So I think that that's the beauty of how I look at this time. But yeah, so that's sort of what I do. Kelly, how about you?
Yeah, it allows me to have the life of being a mom, because I'm a single mom, and raise my daughter the way I want and be there for her when I want. It's more of a flow is the way I look at it. I weave in life and I weave in work at the same time. If I had to drive and go to an office and then drive home, I'd miss out on so much of my daughter's life. That just wouldn't be acceptable for me. And right now she's at 100% distance learning, stay at home. Well, that's important. Somebody has to keep that educational train on the tracks. She's in middle school. She can do some of it, but there are other enticing bells and whistles out there than school to get yourself into. So yeah, I mean, I would have to give up a huge chunk of who I am and what my priorities are, which is my family, and I wouldn't be able to control the environment as well for a better lifestyle for my employees, which are humongously important to me. They take, their lives and what Beyond Indigo means to them as far as a paycheck and a roof and food on their table for their families very, very seriously. And I'd just be dealing with a whole bunch of crabby people on the road all the time. Nobody's happy commuting. Have you ever noticed that? Like nobody is like normally singing in their car going down the road, waving sunshine and roses out the window. Instead, you're like, in America, are they going to pull a gun on me? I'm not sure. So think about that, right?
We don't have that problem here.
No, you guys don't. But in America, you're like, yeah, they do have an AK-47 sticker in the back of that pickup truck. I think I'm going to let them pass. That's okay.
True experience. Just a couple of days ago, I'm driving through Starbucks and I'm talking to my Ukrainian team as I was dropping off my son, and I'm on the phone with my team in the Zoom. And then as I'm driving through, the lady in the window says that we have this sort of pass through. I don't know what they called it, but basically the guy in front of you paid for your coffee. So I'm paying for the guy behind me. And then they're like, it's been going on for like hours now. People are paying for someone behind. And so that's what we see in Canada instead of AK-47.
Hey, so you two, I got some rapid fire questions because we're over time, but I really want to ask them. So I'll start with Kelly, then you, Ivan. A tool that you absolutely can't do without when working remotely. Kelly, you're first.
Slack.
Ivan, you're next.
Zoom and Slack.
Yeah, awesome. Next question. What's the biggest challenge working remotely and how do you overcome it? Kelly, then Ivan.
Getting people to stop working. So it's too enticing and sometimes too much fun. My people geek out on numbers to go and watch like all our ad results and things like that. It's getting to them to stop working. We have many, many lectures about that. Like just shut the lid, walk away, and actually take your PTO time, which means to us not an hour but a day. Like a half a day is the minimum we count for PTO to a day. And I keep PTO because some companies have moved away from it. I want people to stop, like go away, do something else for yourself.
Ivan, you're next.
My biggest challenge is having to see you once a week. So I manage that using our admin, so she limits that to 1 hour. I love you, man.
I know you do. Listen, Kelly, this has been so much fun. I looked down at the time and I was like literally disappointed because I would like to keep this conversation going. It's been so much fun and really inspiring. The work that you guys have done, the mission that you guys are on is awesome. If people want to get a hold of you, if they need help with marketing, what do they do? How do they find you?
BeyondIndigoPets.com. My email is kelly@beyondindigo.com. Come see us. We have a little cute explainer video of Mrs. Whiskers and Dr. Paws right now. Get a little cuteness or a little laugh in your day. The team had a lot of fun putting a lot of puns in that little video. So it's cute, it's fun, right? I see you guys laughing. It's awesome. So check us out there. We're happy to help.
Awesome. And the last two questions that we always ask our guests. So is there anything inspiring, like a TED Talk, YouTube video, or book that you've listened to or seen or read in the recent time and you would suggest to our listeners?
I think Simon Sinek, start with the why. I think the beauty of his speech and why it's inspiring is anybody can understand it. If you haven't listened to his podcast or his video about that TED Talk, he takes a complicated subject and makes it into a simple one. That's always a skill. So I admire that.
Awesome. And then our last question is another innovator that you think we should have on the podcast.
I think if you haven't already, Deborah Hamilton, she and I are putting on an event tomorrow called Speaking the Right Words, but she is a lawyer that helps out in pet matters. And she has a lot of really good insights. And so if people are getting divorced, what happens to the dog, or if there's a conflict between a veterinarian and a pet owner, she steps in and helps with that.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.